I started playing World of Warcraft a couple of years ago, and since then I've spent about 99% of my time playing the Devastation and Augmentation Evoker. Why? Because I came in at Dragonflight, and that was the class to play. That was the new character. But the most commonly requested question I have on my stream is, why don't you play any other characters? So, we're finally going to do it. This series is going to be me taking a class that I know nothing about to becoming relatively acceptable with. And the way we're going to judge that is if I can top the meters in a heroic raid. Hence the name, Zero to Hero. So, the class we're going to use for this series is the Balanced Druid. I know there's Feral, Resto, Guardian, and although I've never played a melee DPS or a healer or even a tank, it does give us those options to go and try it in the future. And I've always wanted to try and tank at some point. So maybe that's another series. So let's kick things off with a character creation. Someone in the stream told me that you could change the different forms and what they look like depending on which race you chose. However, I wanted to pick something big. I've never had a proper transmog character to play around with. So Tauren was the choice. That was easy for me to do. Now, when it comes to naming, I could have honestly sat here for hours. However, if you have a Tauren character, something related to it being a cow is apparently what I should try to do. And someone come up with a genius idea of calling it Smooky. Okay. That wasn't available. I didn't expect it to be available. And I also found out you couldn't even do like more than 3 O's in a name, which is pretty bizarre. So we ended up going for Smooky G. We then called upon Mrs. G to help finish off the customization of the character. But to no surprise, she spent more time talking about the design of her new nails than actually designing the druid. But when she did, she was very quick to find any resemblance she could to me in real life.
But I thought I made you pretty with some
Has he got
braids
one
and
eye?
stuff. Yeah.
Why's he got one eye?
Because you're blind.
And thus, Smooky G was born. Now, I was a little bit confused why the game looks so different, but then I realized on a new character, none of the player profiles are set up correctly. Editing my UI was all different. So, although I didn't want to spend time doing it, it's definitely something you have to do when you start the new character at the beginning. Now, within 5 minutes, I'd unlocked cat form, allowing me to shapeshift into some jaguar cat type thing. Although it was cool, it allowed me to move a lot faster than I was previously. I couldn't find a way to keybind it. It was something that I had to press every single time. Maybe that's something we could look into the future, but I thought it was a little bit inefficient. Now, key bindings aside, cat form was fantastic. I literally have one move, Thrash. All I do is run up to monsters, press Thrash once or twice, and they would be dead. Literally, from this point forward, I don't need any other move. I will just run around like this the entire time. And about 5 minutes later, I then ran into this bear. I'm gonna die here. So it turned out that the cat form wasn't actually great at absolutely everything. Run! However, ironically, after killing the bear, opening the chest in its cave and completing the quest, I could then turn into one myself. Use bear form to shapeshift into a bear, giving me more armor to stay alive in situations like that. Coincidence? I'm not entirely sure. And then shortly after, we were introduced into the travel form, which I think is a deer. But I couldn't really see the benefit of it, to be honest with you. It's the same speed as the cat form, and it has no moves. So we probably won't be using that. And then I finally hit level 10, and I got to select Balanced Druid for the first time. When it came to the talent trees, I wasn't entirely sure how to build it. I didn't want to go straight to Wowhead and start getting cookie cutter builds. And so I thought, why don't we just use the starter build or the recommended default that WoW suggests to us? Let's go like that, especially through leveling. And then once we get to the end, we can play around with it later on. One thing that did kind of bother me was how not all the moves could be used by not every form. As someone who has never played with forms before, I just thought it was a little bit confusing. Have I got 4 different sets of action bars and they've all got to be managed as I go through and get all these different levels? Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a fan of it, especially not to begin with. But then we got into some DPSing, and this was my time to shine. From what I'd seen of the talents, I had 2 dots which I needed to apply. I smashed Wrath, and then I hit Starfire or Star Surge. And no reason, just whichever one I fancied pressing at the time. And this was going to be my starting rotation. And what better way to test it out than jumping straight into a dungeon? Darkmoor Citadel, they paired me up with a guy called Smakiamus, and I very quickly realized that the rotation I'd created probably wasn't that great. He put me in my place. I was not topping any of these details charts, and there's probably a bit more I need to go and look at. So back to the drawing board. When I unlocked my next talent point, I hovered over Eclipse and my brain started finally working. Casting 2 Starfire empowers Wrath for 15 seconds. Casting 2 Wrath empowers Starfire for 15 seconds. And then all of a sudden, it clicked how Eclipse is supposed to work. Oh, wait, hang on a minute. I think Wrath or Starfire, depending whether it's single target or AoE. I thought it was Wrath, and then Starfire or Star Surge. I think it's Wrath or Starfire, single target AoE, and then Surge is like at the end. So after having that spark of genius, I then got on the bird and headed to Orgrimmar. Looking back, I'm probably massively over-engineering this. I'm level 10. I have 1 talent point. All of my talents could completely change in the next 60 levels that I've got to do. It's stuff that I don't need to worry about. Yes, it's good to have a basic understanding of what these core abilities do, but I don't need to stress as much as I was. Now, as I was riding through Orgrimmar on my first quest, I started to look at the chicken form, and wasn't the whole reason I picked Tauren so that I could have transmogs? If I'm now going balanced Druid, and this is the form I need to be in all the time, I've kind of just defeated the point of that, and so I've ended up just having another episode of the Evoker life. What can you do? When it came to leveling, I had 2 choices. One was to follow the idea of hitting time-walking dungeons, smash them out repeatedly, and get my way all the way up to 70, right? Grind my way through the time-walking dungeons. However, I'm quite a new character to the game. I really do enjoy going around the old areas, the old places, the old quest lines, and so someone told me to go and talk to Chromie. When I found them, I didn't realize that you could actually select the timeline as it was released. I had every single expansion. I could go and click on the expansion. For example, I'd never gone from Orgrimmar to Outland. I heard so many people talking about this big green portal. I can go and experience that, and I can go and experience it with not everything at such a weak level where I one-shot stuff. So I thought Chromie was cool. I thought this was a really great opportunity for me to go back and try and explore some of the lands that I don't really know much about. And so I finally landed in Hellfire Peninsula for the very first time to kick off the Burning Crusade campaign. Now, I'm not going to sit here and read every single storyline, but it is cool to fly around this zone and, have a little taste of the experience. I was thinking I'm probably going to finish this leveling way before I get around all of the zones and do all the quests. So we're probably going to mix it up between some questing, some time-walking dungeons, and just see where I have most fun. Now, I did want to go back and have a quick look at the big green portal. I have heard so many people talk about this, going through it for the first time. I wanted to kind of take it in for a moment. Although graphically, it's probably really outdated, it is just pretty cool. And so the leveling begins. I very simply went through every single level and clicked the recommended starter build talent tree. And then I had what I thought was an epiphany and started to piece some of the lore together. The CBC stand for the Burning Crusade. Oh, so it's the Crusade on the Burning Legion. Okay. Oh, interesting. Is that why? So what I think I thought was that the Burning Crusade was the Crusade on the Burning Legion, and the Legion in the Burning Legion is the Legion from the later expansion Legion. Is it all tied together? Is that why the portal's green? And why all of the monsters look like they come from that expansion? Maybe one day we will find out. But for now, we continue on with the leveling. So at level 15, we got our first interrupt, which is always going to be handy. But more importantly, we unlocked Starfall. And someone told me to go try it out. All I have to do is trigger this massive AoE. It drops stars on any single mob that I currently have tagged. Combine that with the dots I applied to every single mob as well, and I just had this continuous AoE damage going out to every single enemy that I'm fighting. This was such an easy AoE class to play right now. I was having so much fun. Everything just dies. Alright, listen, this is kind of fun. Not gonna lie, this is pretty chill. It's pretty chill. Now, one funny issue I hit was I've been using bag add-ons for so long now that when I needed to replace my bags, I simply didn't know how to do it. I must have spent about 5-10 minutes trying to work out how to replace a bag. It kind of just shows my reliance on these things. Now, I can't stress enough how valuable regrowth was. This move, this healing move, especially coming from the evokers, where we have Verdant Embrace, it's a little thing. Living Flame does a little bit of healing, but with the cast time, it's never really beneficial to actually sit there and spam healing yourself. Regrowth was so powerful that it was worth me spending the time to get the cast off if it meant I was going to die. I loved it. It was great to have a proper heal on a character for once. Then I hit level 20. Great little milestone, but what was more important was my travel form had transformed into flight form. I was no longer a deer when I clicked it, but I could turn myself into an eagle and fly myself around. Now, this is great and this is cool, and I completely see why this was valuable to have, but with already having my mounts unlocked and with the introduction of dragon riding, I didn't see any value in having it instead of what I was already using. Straight after we hit level 20, we queued ourselves up for a time walking dungeon, so come back in the next episode to find out how it went.